Hi, everybody, and welcome to Practical Astros YouTube Talks. My name is Christa Hamilton, and I'm here with my friend and astrology apprentice and Nightlight alum, Astro buddy Jeanine. Jeanine, welcome. Welcome to the channel.
Hi, Krista.
Thanks so much for being my guest. We are going to talk about astrology, but astrology from your unique perspective. So, Jeanine is blind, and I have learned so much from Jeanine about the blind community and the sighted community, and both within the larger experience of the blind community, but just within the astrological context too. And that's why I invited her to be a guest to talk about all of this. So, welcome, Jeanine. Any opening thoughts for our conversation today?
Well, I'm just really excited to be here and have an opportunity to share my experience as someone who is blind, and blind is not a four-letter word. Um, so I don't mind that word at all. I know some people get a little uncomfortable with it, but it really is okay. Um, it can be personal preference to some degree,
Hmm.
but most blind people, and that does mean people who use visual aids but cannot use visual aids to have their vision corrected to be what's considered legally sighted.
Right.
So I guess all I would say is I'm really excited to share with you guys how I work with astrology and what some of my background is, because it goes way beyond astrology. And I really have enjoyed working with Nightlight and having this opportunity.
Nice. Well, before we started recording, we talked for a good long time. And one of the things you brought up was just like how people really do treat you differently. You gave an example of like you'll step into an elevator and people will like move to the other side of the elevator, or they won't respond to you if you say hello. It's like there is this fear. You joked, you were like, it's like they can catch blindness if they touch me. um
Yeah, I think it's just a general wariness people have of things that they're not familiar with, that are out of their realm of experience.
yeah.
And unfortunately, we all have that general tendency, but I think if we can learn to let the fear step aside and be open-minded and curious, be mercurial in our approach to life in
Yeah.
general, that it can help us be more open to different perspectives, different lifestyles, different ways of being. And that's really a big part of astrology, right? Being mercurial, being
Yeah.
curious, thinking about outside of the box options that could work. Super important.
Yeah, you and I talked for a while before we started recording, and we talked long enough for Mercury. He was now in Sagittarius as of today to move to the ascendant. And when you look at like any planet that is not at home, it's exiled, right? So it's far away
Correct.
from home. It has to, it can't rely on the support of what it's familiar with. And to me, that feels kind of like what an experience of having a disability like blindness can express like. It's like you really have to figure things out all the time, and it can be exhausting. You gave it an example. Do you want to tell the story that you shared with me before we recorded, just about a difficult situation? You did have an ally kind of come in, but to me, it is emblematic of just how much extra effort from these seemingly mundane experiences that you have as a blind person.
Sure, I can share it in general. So I went to a store. I don't want to name brands here, but I did go to a large box store, if you will. And it's a place where you can get groceries and clothing. And so you guys could figure out it's probably one of the big that you've been to. Uh, and they also have a pharmacy. So I did my business at the pharmacy, and then I needed to pick up simply 4 items from produce. That's it. So I went to customer service, which is standard practice for a blind person in a big, big store like that. You know, it's not like a little mom and pop where you might know where the bananas are all the time. So you go to customer service, and there is legislation that is called the Americans with Disabilities Act that says that I have a right to use public accommodations that are available to others, and that the store has to accommodate that situation so that I can use those facilities, which in the case of a store generally means that they provide some sort of shopping assistance within reason. Like, if you've got to get 400 items, you probably want to get your friend to help you, because at some point they're going to have to stop and go help other people and maybe come back to you. It could take a while. I only needed 4 things in the same section.
Yeah.
So I went to customer service. I asked them for assistance, and I was told that they no longer provide shopping assistance because they want everyone to do it online. The person behind the desk was laughing, and I just assumed that it was whatever, nothing to do with me. You never know what some conversation had been happening prior to me getting up to the desk. So basically, she said that they were only wanting people to use online. They weren't using their store staff that way anymore. I pointed out to her that that violated the Americans with Disabilities Act and that I had a right to shop in their store like others. Well, she wasn't having that. She just continued to laugh at me, so I asked to speak to her manager, who I later found out was actually standing back there the whole time and smirking. And I found out because a Good Samaritan, as Christa mentioned, stepped in and offered to assist me because she had witnessed this whole process. So in the end, I had to do a lot of extra things. It took us like 5 minutes to get the stuff I needed. It was like bananas, oranges, raspberries, and tomatoes, literally all in the same section. And so when I checked out, we managed to get a hold of the customer service manager, who unfortunately was also the person that had been back there smirking the whole time. As it turns out, they had the Americans with Disabilities Act, the basics of the law, posted on their wall in the store. So my Good Samaritan person let me know this, and she pointed it out to the manager and said, "Look, you're violating your own, you know, posting on your own wall here." And long and short of it is, I have to come home and then I have to file a report with their actual store manager, who they claimed was not available and was not on site. And at the time, which also I needed everything in writing anyway, I let them know that I'm very involved with the National Federation of the Blind of Texas and at the national level, which is an organization of and for and by the blind. So we are not an organization that's run by sighted people. All of our officers are blind people, both at the local, state, and national levels. And we have all kinds of groups. We don't have an astrology um, division yet, but we probably will someday.
Yeah, you
I
should you
so
should share
yeah,
that.
I so hope. And you know, so we are a grassroots movement that works to not only help blind people become and live the lives they want, but to also e- educate sighted people about how blind people can live the lives we want. And we work on legislation, and we work as much as we can to bring equity to the lives of blind people. And we have some training centers for people that are newly blinded, but everything is head up and run by blind people themselves. So I wrote this letter. I had to do all this extra work. Basically, if you come home from the store, you're like, "Oh, let me sit down and have a glass of iced tea and, relax for a minute." No, I have to come home, make a phone call to the National Federation of the Blind of Texas, write the letter to the company store manager and say, "Hey, what's your policy now?" Because I've gotten assistance at this location before. I live here, so yeah. And anyway, I haven't heard back. Then I had to go on social media and find out what their national policy is, and I still haven't heard back from that either. But the other part of going on social media is if there are other blind people experiencing this same sort of response at this box store in other cities, states, and towns, they can be alerted and maybe they'll join in and we can change corporate policy by speaking out. So that's part of it, is making sure that other blind people know that, hey, this happened to me. Has it happened to you? And, then they can chime in. Sometimes when someone's newly blind, which I've had some experience of being blind, so it's not true for me. But if you're newly blind, you may not know what the laws are or what your
Yeah.
rights are.
Well, and
So
if
that's
you're
basically what happened. It was a lot of extra work.
Yeah. And so like with that, understanding just the idea of accessibility, it's not just giving people access to what the rest of us have access to, with sight. It's also reducing the amount of just wasted effort. I mean, what you
Yeah.
did was not wasted because you're fighting for something, but it ultimately it's
Well, it was a
it
waste of my time,
is
right?
a waste of
Because
your time. Yeah. I mean, like you could have chose to just be like, well, let it be and not done anything about it. But that
but
just perpetuates the inaccessibility for yourself and other blind
and
people.
everybody
Yeah.
else. And
Yeah.
and and not to mention the 15 or 20 minutes that I stood there trying to convince the lady behind the customer service desk that she should be helping me when they have the policy posted on their wall.
Yeah. I mean,
And
there's
that
like
is where the
the
wasted time was.
yeah, right. Well, then you open up the conversation. There's the letter of the law, like the ADA, and then there's the spirit of the law of like just like helping people
Hmm.
out. Like how like if you need some help, it's
It
it
actually did occur to me, Krista, like, what if a sighted person had come up to the customer service desk and said, I can't find your peaches. Could you please help me find your
mm,
peaches?
mm-hmm.
How would they have reacted? Oh, I'm sorry, we don't provide assistance. You need to go online.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guarantee you that probably would not have been the case. They would have said, "Oh, let me go look and I'll, point you at them or whatever."
Mm-hmm.
Literally, they could have done at least that much. So anyway, but
So
yeah, you're right.
like with this, like the reason why you went home and you took action is because you have done a lot. It's like a lifetime of advocacy work for yourself and people in the blind community. Can you speak a little bit about that, like kind of
Sure.
all of the volunteering that you've done and the advocacy that you've done on a local and national level?
Sure. Well, I was born, let me just go back to the beginning a little bit because I think it will help set the stage. I was born with a disability from birth. So it's called congenital glaucoma. And so I never had full sight, but through surgeries and a lot of treatments and things in early childhood, I managed to keep some vision, enough to read print through about seventh grade, um, because of these procedures. However, I never had full vision, so I was always what they consider legal blindness, which has its own technical definition. Which, if anyone's interested, you can look it up online. And because of that, like I always had to hold books really close and had to explain to teachers why I couldn't read the chalkboard and this and such. I was in public school until I got to be around 14, and then I went to the school for the blind so that I could get some extra training on how to use a cane and how to read Braille and so forth and so on. By that point, I could still see colors and movement and shape, but I could not read small print. I had to use special machines and things like that, or I had to use Braille. So I got some extra training. So I went to public school half a day. I went to school for the blind the other half of the day. And through that, I got connected to people in an organization called the National Federation of the Blind that I've already mentioned, and became a part of that organization and was exposed to training on how to advocate for myself and for others. And so that's pretty much how I got involved in volunteering. And I mean, I've been to protests where we try to get employers to pay people who have disabilities at least minimum wage, not below minimum wage, which,
That's insane.
yes, it is, but it's still legal in this country under certain circumstances. It's Section 14C of the Labor Act. If you file under a particular this particular law, you can get a certification to pay people with disabilities below the minimum wage. We're still fighting that, if you can believe it. It's horrible. Anyway, I've done protests with that, and I've done protests for things like when Amazon initially refused to make their Android type devices accessible. We protested outside Amazon headquarters. I've done a lot of different protests, but anyway, the point of this is not just the protest, but I've been the chapter president of the Austin um, National Federation of the Blind of Austin chapter. I've been on the state board of the National Federation of the Blind of Texas. I worked in the field of technology. That's been my career. I started out as an assistive technology trainer, training blind people how to use the tools that will allow them to work in the office with computers, like using things like what we call screen readers, which are things that basically read what's on the screen to us so that we can access information from the computer. And there are other newer things that I taught as well, braille displays, which basically emulate the screen reader so that you can get the information in a tactile format. So what if you're deaf-blind? A screen reader is not going to help you because you can't hear.
Yeah.
So you can read it in print. Also, if you're on the phone in a customer service job, you can't be listening to your screen reader and trying to listen to the person talk at the same time. It is very confusing. I have done it. And so having a braille display that you can use while you're working with a customer over the phone or over a Zoom line or whatever is super helpful. And in some cases, absolutely necessary, like I said, for someone who may be deafblind or may have attention deficit disorder. You just can't focus on way too many things at once. At least, I don't know, most of us can't.
We try
So
to.
yeah, I do. I sometimes overload my own brain. But anyway, so I have had a lot of experience working with people with disabilities. And then around 2007, I decided, you know what? One of the things that really frustrated me was that I would teach my blind students, and I taught students with all kinds of disabilities. Actually, blindness might have been the most obvious disability, but oftentimes it doesn't come alone. So you may have people with autism or people on the spectrum or, people who've had traumatic brain injury, all kinds of different combinations. And blindness is just one of them. So after doing many years of teaching, I thought, here's a big gap. I can teach you a million ways to use a screen reader and the best ways to use Windows and Mac OS and iPhone and whatever, all these different systems. But if people that develop these things, that create these programs, these applications, these textbooks that are now online, don't create them according to accessibility guidelines, it doesn't matter what I taught you because none of it's going to work
Yeah.
because they're not following the guidelines. So I went and got a bunch of certifications, HTML5, CSS3, um, Java, audio certification. I just tons of International Association of Accessibility Professionals. I'm certified as a you know core competency person under their organization. So just a bunch of different variety of those things, and types of certification beyond having a bachelor's. I was what I call an overachiever and an employed person, meaning I didn't want to just have one degree. I had to go for a triple major in history, science, and Spanish, social science and Spanish. So, and a minor in computer science. So it's really because I went to school too long because I couldn't find a job that would pay enough money. And that goes back to the discrimination we talked
Hmm.
about somewhat at the beginning. Most The unemployment rate for the blind in this country, in the United States, is still 70%. It has not budged much since the 60s.
Wow.
And if sighted people had that level of unemployment, I can promise you there would be some outrage.
Yeah.
Um, and so it is a challenge because let's face it, unfortunately, most of us see somebody from a distance, those of us who can see, and we may judge them based on what we see and our lack of information, or maybe our very limited amount of information. Like maybe we knew somebody's grandma who had a stroke and really couldn't function. And part of the stroke caused blindness, or the outcome of the stroke caused blindness. And they really, they're 70 or 60, 80, whatever years old. They've never had any training. They've lived their whole life sighted. That's a completely different experience because they have an impairment to their brain that impacts what they can learn and what they can physically do that is not necessarily related to the blindness itself. So you might have this memory of this person's grandmother, and you're like, well, I can't hire that person. They can't do anything when you first see them. But that's not necessarily that person's experience, or they probably wouldn't be there to interview for your job.
Right.
Um, but everybody should have the opportunity, even this grandmother who may have been able to overcome her challenges from whatever stroke or whatever thing it might have been, and get training. We provide training to people, seniors. I trained a lady on technology that was fabulous at one point. She was 88 years old. I mean, she could outrun probably most you or I, Christa, for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, so you just don't know. And it's important to keep that mercurial, Sagittarian, broad perspective
Mm-hmm.
and open curiosity because you just never know what talent someone has.
And that's the thing is like, giving chance to things that maybe you are not so sure of.
Correct.
You can be surprised because humans are very inventive, and it's like energy and chi flows around any sort of blockages. And I think adaptability kind of works the same way. It's like if you were given a challenge, it with enough will and support and circumstance, you can find a way around it. It's like water finds a way around the rocks.
And it's
And
like, what's the saying? The necessity is the mother of all invention.
yep.
You know, I- it might not always even be obvious to me how I'm going to accomplish something, but as I sit down to do it, and if I have my mind made up to do it, I will do what it takes to work through, including going to friends of mine in the National Federation of the Blind, other blind people, and say, hey, have you ever run into this? How did you
Hmm.
do it?
Yeah.
And I do that for others, and they do that for me.
Yeah.
That's why it's important sometimes if you have a challenge, whatever it may be, or disability or whatever, you go talk to your mom friends who have kids and say, well, when your kid threw a fit about that, what did you do?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the same difference.
Well, when it came to astrology, and you and I met on Twitter 4 years ago. Is that what we figured out? 3 or 4 years ago?
3 years, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't know you were blind. I just thought you were another astrology fan. But then when I found out you were blind and you were talking about charts, I was like, how do you read a chart? I didn't know about screen readers, but I was blown away just out of my own ignorance from the blind community. I've known a few blind people, but I've never like been close to any, so I haven't been intimate in like what their process of being able to access things that are so easy for me because I could look at a screen and just read it and just take all that information in really quickly, as opposed to having to have some sort of program that reads it to me, which causes delay, it causes extra time, it causes more effort. I didn't understand any of that. And I was like super blown away that you studied astrology, because I had no concept of like, how does a blind person read an astrology chart? And I know it's not simple, and I know that you have also dealt with certain programs and websites and apps that are not accessible, that do not provide you information, that are basically just, blank screens with no information that you can see because of the way that they're programmed. So can we talk a little bit about like the talk a little bit about your astrology history, because it's not like you just decided to study astrology one day.
Exactly,
It's been
yeah.
part of you, but also, so give some historical context to that, but then also I'd like to talk about modern astrology software
Sure.
and accessibility within that, because that's what I think this audience is mostly an astrology audience. And I think if each of us understand that as we create astrological content, to keep accessibility in mind, because it's easy for us to do it on the front end to create less running around for people in the blind community.
Yeah, exactly. So, let me start with this. When I was 8 years old, I could still see the moon and a little bit of the stars. And I remember being outside with my mom, and I was looking up, and my mom was trying to point out to see. I think she was partly trying to see what I could see because she wasn't sure herself. Because even when you measure things in a doctor's office, it's a little different in the real world. So I told her as we were looking at the moon and stars and whatever, I want to be an astronomer. So I was
Oh.
always fascinated with the sky and
Yeah.
the stars and the moon. So around, she tried to explain to me then. I want to make it clear this is not true now. There are blind astronomers because there are audio technologies that allow blind astrologers to track stars and their motions. And I
Ah.
mean astronomers. I don't mean just astrologers.
Yeah.
Um, And actually, the only blind astrologers I know, and if there are any out there when we get to the end of this with my email, please contact me because I would love to be in touch. But the ones I know of are all in India. I don't know of any in the United States or in the Western tradition. So if you're out there, feel free to shoot me a holler later. Um, so at around age 11, I used to get this weekly newspaper for preteens, and in it had the horoscopes, and so I would just read them, like even though I had to hold the paper like an inch from my nose. I would read all the horoscopes and try to figure out the dates and everybody in my family who was what, and of course it was all sun sign based at that time.
Yeah.
Then as I got older, I got some friends that were really interested in astrology that were also actually blind, that had learned to use different technologies, and it wasn't computers yet then. These were devices you could learn to read print books by using your finger, and it wasn't Braille. They were called the Opticon, and it translated printed text. You ran a camera over it, and you held your finger on this spot on the machine, and the print letters went under your finger, so you'd get one print letter at a time. I also learned to use that machine. Many blind people that I knew at that time had learned how to use that machine, and some of them were interested in astrology and taught themselves the glyphs that way, as well as reading astrology books and things that were only available in print. And so I started hanging out with these people and going to, the crystal bookstores and the, book woman in Austin, all the places where you can learn
Classic.
about this. Yeah, 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 all the stuff. And going to the fairs, the Renaissance fair, wherever you can find astrologers and tarot readers and, legit people. And so I just really became fascinated. And then I learned about a computer program in the early I guess it was mid to late 80s. It was still under Astrolabe at that time, which became Solar Fire and Astro Gold later
Mm-hmm.
on. And at that time, it was DOS based, which might give my age away, but that's okay. Um, if you don't know what DOS is, just forget I ever said the word.
You just
Um,
pat you on your long young little
yeah,
head.
exactly, exactly. But it was great for me as a blind person because DOS was all text-based. It wasn't graphical, meaning, it wasn't based on images, it was based on words. And so I could use that to run astrology charts. So before I ever even formally began to learn and study astrology as a formal student, I was reading and learning and running charts for friends of mine. And people would, oh, I want to know more. And, they would come and talk to me about it. Learn the astrological written code, NR stands for this. And at that time, everything was presented as tables instead of the circular image we see today as the actual chart.
Mm-hmm.
It was done in tables, and it was honestly, in some ways, it was a lot more accessible to me then because everybody was doing it that way. So there wasn't, we weren't getting left out because it was all done that way. So it was in that transition between doing charts by hand and really being into the graphical user interface where you are using the visual imagery of charts and more of a two-dimensional representation. So when we got into things like AstroGold and the graphical user interface and all of that, things became more challenging because developers and designers of these applications didn't always, or most often didn't, I'll be honest, ever think of a blind person or someone who would access a computer not having sight. And so because they didn't think of that, they didn't follow guidelines that exist under the what's called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, um, to make their programs work with things like I use called a screen reader or a braille display or other assistive technologies. Those aren't the only types of assistive technologies. Those are just the ones that are mainly used by blind people. Um, so they did not code their applications to where things could be usable to me in many cases. So, for example, I use AstroGold, but I can't access everything in the application. I use I just slipped my mind the name of it. Um,
Time
you use
passages.
time
Yeah.
passages, but I can't use everything in the application. Probably, and I will give credit to where credit is due. Astro-seek.com
Oh
is
yeah.
thebomb.com.
Peters. Yeah.
Peter, if you're out there, I would love to speak to you. There's more you could do, sir, but you are doing an awesome job without even realizing it.
Yeah.
So I would be happy as peaches to work with you, or however you want to say it, because you've got some stuff that I can use that no one else has made available to me, and I don't even think you realize it. So congrats. But AstroGold, for example, I run charts in AstroGold with my iPhone, my iPad, whatever. I now have a Mac, which was gifted to me through, I'll just say, someone who wants me to do some work for them. So it was kind of gifted. It really was, but they also
With
want
a
me to
string
train them.
attached.
Yeah, yeah, but in a
That's
nice
fine.
way.
That's a good exchange.
Hey, I'm happy. It's an M5. I'm not complaining. So I'll be able to use AstroGold on all these things. But there are things I can't do. I can't use the lots, for example. I can't access the icons to get the lots added that
Hmm.
Chris Brennan so beautifully made available. And you can purchase his little packages, which I did, and unfortunately can't install them. So there's things like that where I just can't get to that information, but I can on AstroSeek. So thank you, sir, again. And I guess my point in all this with the modern software today, I have to use 3 or 4 programs to look up everything I want to know.
Yeah.
In AstroSeek, I can't tell what phase the moon is, so I have to go to time passages because it exposes that information to the screen reader through the code.
Hmm.
It doesn't in AstroGo. Don't ask me why. I have no idea. I can't even see in AstroGo which planets are retrograde. I have to go to time passages for that. But unfortunately, in my opinion, time passages is not always as accurate with the latitude, longitude, and therefore the timing is sometimes off.
Mm.
And so, I really tend to run my charts first in AstroGold or Solar Flyer, and then I, go to other applications to get details elsewhere that I need that I can't get through AstroGold. I also
Yeah,
use
so in Astrogold, the retrograde planets are coded, they're in red, but you would only know that by seeing it. They don't
But
have
there,
the
but there is
RX
an
on
alt,
it. There's not a
yeah, there
code that
is
says that. Huh.
there is an alternative way for them to do that. And by law, actually, if somebody, I'm not trying to threaten anybody here, just stating the
Sounds like you're
facts.
trying to threaten. No, I'm kidding.
Hey, take it however you hear it. But, the reality is there are laws out there that require people to make their software accessible, especially if it's being used in professional ways, which AstroGold is. So I would just say to you, it behooves you to consider that there is an alternative way to make that information available not only by color, and also, by the way, over 70% of men, period, of whether you want to call them blind or not, are somewhat, to some degree, colorblind. And red and green are the two major colors that men see as gray
Huh.
or not quite red and green. So using red as the only marcation of something being retrograde is probably not your best design choice.
Ah, it's good to
Um,
know.
and so, yeah. So at any rate, I mean, what I do for a living today is I am a blind accessibility auditor. I audit websites for accessibility and not just for blind people. So I know the WCAG, quote unquote, web content accessibility guidelines. I know what standards are available and, what things can be done and should be done to make things work for people with all kinds of different abilities or differently abled, doing things differently than the average person. One of them is color blindness.
So
So
people that have websites can hire you to look at their
yeah,
website and
yeah,
see and
yeah,
audit its
sure,
accessibility. That's good to
sure,
know.
yeah. I don't do as much of that anymore. It's a contract basis. I work, in an hourly circumstance because I'm transitioning to what I really love, which, getting back to the astrology, is that.
Yeah.
And I'm currently in the Nightlight Astrology School, and I really want to give kudos out to Adam and the whole gang there because connecting. It's so funny because I had heard Adam speak on an Astrology Hub episode where I first started getting involved in a more active learning process. I say it that way because I'd always been looking into astrology my entire life since I told you about age 8. So then in 2019, just before the pandemic, I really started listening to Chris Brennan, which many of us did, the astrology podcast, and I just was enthralled. Before that, I had used the Koch and the Placidus house systems. Couldn't have given you the first reason why. It's just all I ever knew.
Yeah.
And then I started listening to Chris and Kelly Surtees and Austin Coppock and their monthly episodes, and gradually more and more episodes. My ex-wife, who was my wife at the time, used to say, I could go to sleep to that. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I can't sleep because of this. I'm just like, I'd be awake all night listening to this
the
stuff. And
the
some of it,
dulcet tones of Chris Brennan.
I I loved it. I mean, I
Yeah.
was eating it up. And so thank you guys because you really got me through the pandemic and more. And then I got involved with Astrology Hub and their monthly group that they have. And anyway, I heard Adam for the first time when he was still a Tuta Baba, and I just really fell in love with him and enjoyed his presentations through their platform. And then, lo and behold, who do I meet on what used to be Twitter? Practical Astros and celestial astrology and some of these folks. And I had no idea they'd been part of that school and that
Mm,
we're alumni, or soon to be alumni. And so we just connected, which, whatever, fate or fortune. I
both.
won't, yeah, exactly. So eventually I looked into Adam's school and decided that's where I wanted to go. The spiritual divination side of things was, spoke to me as someone who grew up in a, I wouldn't say religious family, but definitely we were Christian. My mom went to my mom was heavily religious later in life, but as children, we were supposed to go to Sunday school and all that. But it just really spoke to me. I've always had that intuitive sense that there is a universal higher knowing, gnosis, as Adam calls it. I've always had that inside me, that I understood that. And so I enrolled finally in 2024. Yeah,
Yep.
2024. And so I did my first year. I'm now halfway through my second year, and I will be continuing through 4 years because I've already paid for them. So definitely know I'll be doing it. And I just love it. But back to the applications and how people today writing applications. First of all, if you can only remember that there are ways to make things, I'll skip the word accessible and say available
There you go.
to people of all types of learning styles and abilities. If you can keep that mercurial mindset in the big picture, in the background, then you can remind yourself to start looking up, how do I do this so it's available to more people? So more people can benefit from the divination and the understanding of Hermes and his/her teachings, because they are invaluable.
Yeah.
The insight that I've gained about myself and about others is absolutely, I couldn't put money on it. Um, it's a beautiful thing, and we should all have the opportunity, if so we choose, if we so choose to access it. So keep that in mind. If you don't take anything else away from what I say today, take that away. And then know that the information's out there and you can learn about it and learn how to make your programs be more available to more people. And in terms of classes and coursework, I want to congratulate Nightlight, because sometimes there are challenges with the way things are presented, and I don't just mean by Nightlight, by astrologers in general, because
Mm-hmm.
they don't realize it's not that they're trying to, it's not intentional. It's not like what happened to me at that big box store.
Yeah.
It's literally they're just not aware. So they may be talking about a chart and they'll say, well, this person's interested in knowing more about their career, so we're going to take a look at their chart. And they'll say, well, their ascendant is, in Libra. What do you think about this chart? Now, if you're blind and you hear that statement, you're thinking, I don't think anything about that chart because
I
you
don't know
told me
it.
nothing. So if you could just remember to say, some pretty good, I mean, it might seem like it would take a long time, but it really doesn't. To say, the ascendant's at 10 degrees Libra, 15 minutes, or even if you can just give the degrees, that's usually more than enough in a quick teaching session, whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
webinar or a classroom, to help someone who's not seeing the screen. And I've heard this from people that are sighted, like my sister, who says when she's listening to things and people give that kind of information about what's going on, she can follow it better and she's perfectly sighted.
Yeah.
So I think it helps a lot of people, not just someone without sight. And
Well, it was
so,
helpful last year when I started that Deccan walk.
mhm.
You came to me early on and you were like, "Can you just describe the cards?" Like you
Oh,
you
that
you
was so awesome.
you say you're showing the cards, but I have no idea what the cards look like. And just the and that was like a real turning point for me of the even just the process of describing the card helped reveal something else about the card that I hadn't received yet because I had not taken the time to just verbally describe the card out loud, even if sighted people could see it on the screen. Taking the time to describe it, or I would ask the other guests, would you describe the card? I want to see what stands
Mhm.
out to you.
Mhm.
And just describing the card is in itself part of that divination. And that was really the big turning point for me of okay, well, if someone is just listening to this, whether they're sighted or not. I listen to
Yeah.
YouTube. I don't hardly ever watch YouTube. I usually just listen to it. And if there's that visual context that's described through language, it is a different type of information than what I'm choosing to see versus what the narrator is choosing to comment. It's like that. It's like oral history. It's through the filter of the person carrying the information through.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's very important to think about that, that it's not, you're helping your audience grow, not just
Yeah.
because you want to help blind people or something. You're helping yourself
Yeah.
because you're drawing in more of an audience, a different audience, a demographic that maybe would have said, well, this sounds interesting, but I can't really follow it. And yet, if you had done the visual description, that divination will speak to you, but it will also speak to others in a way they may not have heard it otherwise.
Right.
And it's important. There's one more thing I want to say in terms of making things available. And I know that this can be a bit of a tough spot for people, but when you publish an astrological text, a book, I'm not talking about some of the ancient text. We can't change what was printed in a way that's only available in print, other than when you do I forget what it's called, Christa, when you do like a revised version, like a translation, that's the word, of the, into a newer form,
Mm-hmm.
into a new language, you bring it to digital format. Think about that. Lots of people want to be able to read that. I want to go back and look at Valens and understand what Valens had to say. Right now, those original texts, for the most part, are not available to me because they're either screenshots of print or they're PDFs that have not been made accessible.
Hmm.
And they can be. There are methods for making those available for screen reader people using screen readers to access. There are ways. So think about that. Like I said, it's probably the key thing here, to think about making your stuff as available as you can. And there are ways to do that that include people with disabilities and people who are blind. And when you're printing a book and it's only available in print, and I know we have some people in the astrology community that feel strongly that we should keep access to our hard copy books. I am all in favor of you having that, perfectly comfortable with it. But can I please have some access too?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's too much to ask. I'm more than happy for you to have all the print books. I mean, I can remember I used to hide lamps under the cover at night because I couldn't see that well, and I didn't want to get caught being awake when I was supposed to be asleep, a little kid. I mean, I was reading sixth grade books when I was in the third grade because I read everything in my school library, but I had to do it in ways that were, different from everybody else because I had to hold everything closed. I had to have brighter lights, la la la, all this stuff. And I can remember, so I loved print books. I loved to read. And so please have your print books, but just remember there are ways to make them available that can be for everyone. And I want to give a shout out to Demetra George because she's been very gracious, her publishing company, in allowing, when possible, for some of us to be able to get information we might not have otherwise gotten that she only had available in print. And so people like that who you email, and maybe this goes to blind people. Don't be afraid to reach out
Yeah.
to your astrology school if you're interested in astrology, to the people publishing books that you can't find in any other way but print, and say, hey, I know this is only available in print at the moment, but somebody wrote it up on a computer somewhere. I promise you, in today's world, that is true. And therefore, there is a way to make that available for someone who cannot see. And not to pound on the law too much, but there are laws that say that there that if you're going to make it available to people that read print, that it needs to be available to other people. So no one wants to go into a legal reference, so I'm not encouraging anyone to go that route. I'm encouraging to be brave, to be open, to use that mercurial mindset to talk to each other, communicate with the publishers, communicate with the authors, communicate with your instructors. Be curious. Don't assume the answer is no before you ask the question.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a good reminder to say like the law was created because the need was already there. So if
Yes,
people aren't aware that the law is there, it like gets your attention of like they've already gone through the process of passing this as a law because the need is there. And so if I am able to meet that need, I really should, for both the spirit and the letter of the law, um, to give more people access, make available this information to a broader swath of
audience.
people.
Yeah.
So when people publish now, um, are there particular formats that are easier, that are more accessible or more available to people? I know so PDF is a no go.
Well, actually, no, it's not that PDF is a no-go. It's that you can code PDF in such a way that makes it accessible, or you can code it in such a way that doesn't make it accessible.
Hmm.
So there are tags, what are called tags, you can add in a PDF document that will pass the information so that a screen reader can get at it
Okay.
and provide it to you. But if those tags are not included, then that won't happen, and it'll just be like a blank page, and I won't get anything from it.
Yeah.
So most books that are published today in PDF format, I can find a way to get at if I have access to the book. Unfortunately, a lot of books are put out in the astrology community only as print. And when that happens, then I'm in a big loss, because just think, even if I go buy your print book, I have to scan every single page. If I'm fortunate enough to have access to a scanner, which is not cheap, not everybody has a scanner and a printer at home these days. I mean, most people go to, Kinko's or Office Depot or somewhere like that and scan something and print it. They don't keep all that at home. So why should I, as a blind people who's already unemployed, or blind person who's already unemployed or underemployed, which is 70% of blind people today, believe it or not, are either unemployed or underemployed. So they don't have a lot of money. They don't have this stuff at home. They're not going to be able to stand at Kiko's and scan your 999 page book or 300 page book even. So just consider there are ways to do this that you can reach a broader audience. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
There are laws that say you're supposed to, but I personally I like to interact. So I'm more likely and I really hope that this is true for others who need access, that you will communicate first. Don't don't fall back on the troll of throw the hammer at everybody, because sometimes people just don't know that they could do it different.
Yeah.
or it feels too overwhelming to learn how to do it different. And so helping that process is by communicating that, hey, there is another way. Let me put you in touch with people that can help you get this accessible. I'm not the only person. I don't know how to put PDFs into an accessible format. That's not something I do. For one thing, the software, unfortunately, that sighted people use to do that is not accessible, which is insane, but still true. And yes, we're working on it. But things come in stages.
Yeah.
The world is not perfect, or we wouldn't be here anymore because
No.
we wouldn't be needed. But I guess I just want to say thank you to everyone who really has listened when I've spoken up in the astrology community and tried to adjust and accommodate and make it possible for me to continue to advance my learning. And you know, I really am so grateful to all of you for that because I love astrology. It's like the rabbit hole of all rabbit holes.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can see, I've been through many rabbit holes in my life. Some out of necessity, some I would have wished I could have avoided. Some holes I've fallen into literally I wished I could have avoided.
Mm-hmm.
But some I love, and this is one of them. And I want to share that with as many people, sighted, blind, whatever, I don't care, as possible. I want to be able to read charts for people, which I can now and have. Got a big project coming up over the holidays to read a bunch of charts for some of my family members. I'm excited about that. I've read charts for other people as well, coworkers, friends. I've actually gotten some money for reading charts, even though I'm still a student. But I have done this even before I formally studied. So
Yeah.
I'm just much better. I mean, taking the Nightlight program has been like just life changing.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of understanding why I believe the way I believe, why I teach the way I teach astrology, why I think about it the way I think. Just the other night in our apprentice class, Christa had us looking at archetypes in relationship to movies, and it was just it was fascinating. It's fabulous. I mean, I was totally after we got off the phone. And, well, it was Zoom, but you know what I mean. Still old school here. I'm showing my age again. But it was like I couldn't stop thinking about, well, what archetype does this fit, and what are
Mm-hmm.
and so anyway, and then I turned around and was explaining it to another blind friend because they were asking me, what do you mean archetype? But yeah, how do you think about it? So it just you keep passing that knowledge along where people are hungry for it. And a lot of people are hungry for it.
Yeah, there's something about astrological knowledge and wisdom that is it's like regenerative energy. It's like
Mm-hmm.
spending the energy learning about it and understanding it then fuels your own energy. It's like it is like this reciprocal aurora boreas of wisdom and energy that
Absolutely.
I think that's why it's not a just a rabbit hole. It's like a rabbit warren where there's all these different other tangential places that you can adventure. That once you kind of get into it, it
You're hooked.
you're just hooked. That's
And there's
end of
so
story.
many directions you can go. Medical astrology, locational astrology, not to mention the different I don't want to use the wrong word, but like, there's Vedic astrology, Western traditional, evolutionary, Uranian, Chinese astrology. I mean, there's just so many things, not to mention the different, like I said, the different subdivisions of astrology, the different branches. So
Yeah, I mean,
it,
even just like the niche, like I love the Decans, I love Tarot,
oh,
but
yeah.
like the lunar mansions, like as like a thing, are just sitting on my peripheral, just be like waiting to be front of mind. I can just
And
see
that's
them
how I
there.
feel about, yeah, yeah, exactly. And I love the Decans too. When you first started describing, I thought I would never, I got Susan T. Chang's book a long time ago, which thank you, Susan, because you made it available on Kindle and that was accessible to me. Thank you, thank you. And so, um, I got the book and I started reading. I'm like, oh my God, I'm never going to understand this. It's just like completely, it blows my mind. And no offense to the writer, the author, the poetry in the book, the imagery, it's beautiful, but I didn't understand the cards, what they look like.
Yeah.
And so having access to that through what Christa has provided was just amazing. It changed my whole perspective of tarot because I thought I'll never be able to use this. And now I don't think that. Do I think I'll use it as much as I will other things? I don't know yet, but I do know I'll use the decans themselves and have already begun to use them
Yeah.
because now that I have the understanding of how they relate to the cards, it's given me a fuller perspective of their meanings, a divination and gnosis of their meanings I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, it
And it's
reminds me
beautiful.
that after I did that, I was I had the thought of I just need to go through and just describe all the major arcana and then describe all the court cards because that I did describe some in the Deccan project, but mostly I stuck with just the minor
Mm-hmm.
arcana, just the three cards
Mm-hmm.
of the Decans. Just because I mean, yes, if it's helpful to people, great, but also because it's just such a great exercise as a tarotista to go through and spend that much time with the cards that we take it for granted. And anything you take for granted, it's good to take that pause and revisit. Mercury's about to be retrograde soon for us, so it's like a good revisiting time of going back to something that seems familiar and coming at it with a new perspective. Um, but
You
we need to wrap up. So I wanted to one, thank you for just having this conversation. I wanted to have it with you for a long time. Glad that we could get the schedule. But then also just to encourage people to seek you out as I asked you at the beginning, like, do you want me to introduce you as an astrologer? And there was a hesitancy, and you're like an astrology student. But my argument is that you are an astrologer. You may not think of yourself that because you were of that student mind. But I see you as an astrologer because you practice astrology, whether it's just for you and your family, you're still doing that work. So, uh, would you like to just? I'd like you to say it, like if you're open to
sure.
people
So
contacting
so
you.
yes, absolutely. I would love for people to contact me. I'm available for astrology consultation, and I would do discounted fees, and we can negotiate that depending on your circumstances, since I am a student with Nightlight in my second year, and I want to be fair with people about that. However, I've had a lot of experience looking at charts over many years before I started studying, as I mentioned. So my email address is available. It's Jeanine, Jeanine, period, Lineback, Lineback, which let me, at gmail.com. I know that's a lot to remember, so let me say this. If you can't find me by my email address, I am J Lineback, Jlineback. That's Back. No ERs. I'm not that broad. On Twitter or slash X, on Blue Sky, on Facebook. You can Google me. You will see much younger pictures of me on Google, but you can find me there as well. I'm pretty much everywhere. So, like, if you want to find me, please feel free to reach out for either astrology consultations. I'm very much happy to do that. That's the direction I'm working in now. But also, if you just want more information, either as a sighted person who's wanting to make sure that your stuff is more available to people who are blind and visually impaired, please reach out to me for that as well. I do contract for accessibility auditing, and I can also put you in touch with people who may have more information about your particular area of necessity. Like I mentioned, I don't do PDF stuff, so if you need information, I can put you in touch with people. If you're interested in the National Federation of the Blind, and you're blind or not blind even, we have sighted allies, as we call them, that are, have the heart of a blind person, kind of like Christa, and they can see through the fog, so to speak. And anyway, so if you're interested in any of those things, reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to do what I can. So that's me. I'm pretty much J Lineback everywhere.
Well,
Ask Krista. I'm even on LinkedIn. So,
I'll put your email and name in the description of this video
and you can
too.
also
So
add
if
the at J Lineback if you wish, because
okay, I'll
it's
do that too.
easy to
Yeah.
find and less to spell.
All right. Well, with that, thank you so much, Jeanine. It's always good to talk with you.
My
To
pleasure.
to close up, when you were talking about being a kid, when you still had some vision and had those hot lamps,
Yeah,
not like
yeah.
under the
The
covers so that you could read,
halogen lamps. The
but
halogen lamps. Yeah.
so Janine is a Capricorn rising and she has Mercury and Aries in the fourth house. And that's how I was imagining it, is like that bold, brazen Mercury Aries, like defying burning her bedroom down by still wanting to get that information and read in that fourth house of like under the covers in your home. It just like it was a nice little visual of that buried Hermes in the fourth house and a hot, fiery, brazen sign of Aries. That's how I was
Good
picturing it.
point. Good point. I also, though, have Neptune in Scorpio ruled by Mars. So,
There you
you
go.
know, there's that.
Thanks again, Janine.
All right. Awesome.